At 19, a forced marriage to a millionaire cowboy revealed an incredible gift that shocked everyone. Emily Parker stood in the shadow of the family diner, her fingers nervously tracing the cracked wooden railing. Around her, the small-town energy buzzed with the chatter of patrons enjoying their meals. But for Emily, every laugh, every clink of silverware felt like a distant echo of a life that was slipping away. The news of her engagement to Colt had crashed down like a summer storm, dark clouds obscuring every dream she had woven since childhood. Her aspirations of attending college, embracing a life full of stories and adventure, were quickly suffocated in a web of debt and obligation. The day her parents announced the arrangement, she felt as if her heart had been tossed into the dusty corners of the diner, left to gather dirt beneath the table. Colt, the rugged heir of Mackenzie Ranch, seemed charming, but held a life mapped out by centuries of tradition, one that didn't include room for a voice like hers. Each glance from him stirred both admiration and resentment. His easy confidence was a stark contrast to her growing sense of entrapment. As she bore the weight of her family's decisions, a storm brewed inside her, turbulent and chaotic. Days turned to nights, and the wedding day loomed like a guillotine. As she lost herself in thoughts of what could have been, the written word became her only refuge. In the quiet hours beneath a starlit sky, she would scribble furiously in a notebook, weaving tales inspired by the hidden lives around her, along with the silent confinement she felt. But when Colt found her one evening, laughter bubbled up, melding with disbelief. "Writers don't belong in the rodeo," he teased, his voice light, but it carried the weight of judgment. Emily's fingers froze, the ink blotting as her heart sank. Did he truly believe her passion was frivolous? This thought planted a seed of doubt that twisted deeper each day. Was her desire for self-expression a betrayal of the family values she was about to marry into? A hunter of words falling prey to whispered judgments. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Days passed in torment, each moment wrapped in the agony of unspoken desires. Houses full of laughter echoed in her ears, but she felt the drumming of her heart drown out any comfort the community could offer.
Then everything shifted when, in a frenzied search through her family's old storage, she stumbled upon a dusty box of letters beneath the floorboards. Secrets began to unravel, and with them emerged the haunting echoes of a feud that dated back generations. The tightly woven threads of her family's history intertwined with Colt's, creating a tapestry of connections she had never imagined. Each revelation ignited something deep within her. There was no longer merely a choice between duty and desire. It was the weight of legacy, an immense responsibility breaking down her defenses. As she pieced together the painful truths of their families, Emily felt a surge of defiance rise from within. She would not let this cage contain her spirit. A manuscript began to blossom, capturing her anguish along with the ancient grievances that dictated her life's path. As wedding bells echoed ominously in the distance, Emily steadied herself for a public reading, the one chance to reclaim her narrative. The crowd gathered, their chatter fading as she took center stage, her heart racing in rhythmic thuds against her chest. Just as she gathered her breath to unleash her truth, the audience parted, revealing an unexpected figure who stepped forward, a harbinger of change that might unravel everything. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Who was this intruder, and what would they reveal? The stakes had never felt higher. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the figure stepped closer, a wave of recognition crashing over her. It was Clara, the estranged sister of her mother, a woman whose name had been whispered in cautionary tones throughout her childhood. The family feud had manifested in generations of silence, yet here stood Clara, defying the unspoken rules that had bound them all. "Emily," Clara said, her voice equal parts resolve and tenderness, "we need to talk." For a heartbeat, Emily remained frozen in uncertainty. This moment could either catalyze her liberation or shatter the last threads of her existence as she knew it. The gathering crowd faded into involuntary spectators. The weight of her manuscript, her voice, slipped from her grasp. "Why now?" Emily managed, her words heavy with disbelief. "What do you want from me?" Clara stepped into the light, her eyes shadowed with a mixture of pain and pride. "I want to free you from the binds of our family's history. You deserve to know the truth about us, about Colt's family, about everything that has been hidden." The tension in the air was palpable, the collective anticipation racing through the crowd like an unspent electrical charge. Emily returned her gaze to her manuscript, and a deep sense of urgency began to swell within her. Here was an opportunity to reframe the narrative that had been imposed upon her. Yet uncertainty stung her heart. Would a fresh revelation about her family provide clarity or just deepen her entrapment?
"I've seen what happens when we don't confront our past," Clara continued, taking a step forward, seemingly undeterred by the escalating tension. "You have the power within you. Writing is your weapon, and it can change your story." Emily's chest tightened. Why didn't she see writing as a weapon before? It had always been her refuge. But could it truly dismantle the shackles of obligation holding her in this forced marriage? The thought of unveiling deeply buried family truths ignited a flicker of rebellion within her, and yet fear loomed ominously over the excitement of potential liberation. "Are you willing to stand by me? If I speak out, I could lose everything. Colt, my family." The frailty in her voice betrayed the tumult of emotions swirling inside, hundreds of possible outcomes playing out in her mind. "I will help you," Clara affirmed, the gravity of her statement weighing heavily in the air. "But you must find it within yourself to reclaim your voice. You are more than the product of this marriage. You can be the author of your own story." As Clara's words resonated in her mind, Emily felt an uneasy balance of fear and exhilaration, an invitation to forge her own path. The life she had envisioned as a child, full of stories and adventures, flickered through her thoughts like a distant star, a glimmer of hope amongst the chaos. Colt's features flashed in her mind. Would he support her or condemn her choices? Could she risk everything to step into the unknown, where her ambitions teetered on the edge? "Make a choice, Emily," Clara urged, breaking through her muddled thoughts, "before you lose your voice forever." The fleeting power she had discovered surged back, igniting a spark within her. She couldn't ignore the call to action, an eventual reckoning with her past. Everything would change. As she began to gather her breath for a new approach to the reading, Colt's piercing gaze locked onto hers from the crowd. There was determination mixed with confusion, and perhaps something deeper. The moment stretched as both a challenge and a revelation unfurled between them. What path would Emily choose, and how far would she be willing to go to uncover the truth that could define her destiny? The time for transformation was now, but consequences loomed heavily along the horizon. Before she could resolve herself, uncertainty remained. Was she ready to unleash the hidden truths that could either bind or break her?
The weight of Clara's words settled onto Emily like a thick fog, obscuring her vision, but illuminating the path forward with an unsettling clarity. She felt suspended in time, caught between her past, shackled by familial expectations, and an intoxicating vision of a future where her voice held power. The crowd around her morphed into a murmur, their disembodied whispers melding into a single, suffocating sound. With Clara's determined gaze fixed upon her, Emily realized the stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just about her.
This was about dismantling the intricate web of secrets spun by generations, unearthing narratives tucked away in dark corners. Could she be the one to untangle that history? Each heartbeat pulsed with possibility, drowning out fear. "You can do this," Clara urged softly, as though she could read Emily's every conflict. The sincerity in her tone fired up a recognition buried deep within Emily. Writing had been her sanctuary, her method of reflection and revelation, but now it also presented itself as her sword, suppressing the echoes of a past she never chose. In that moment, clarity surged, and Emily drew a deep breath. Where once she had treated her writing as mere expression, it now crystallized into a mission. She envisioned her first strokes on the page. They wouldn't just spill tales, but would challenge truths that had long been dormant. The fight for her own narrative flickered bright. "How do I start?" she inhaled, feeling fragile yet daring in this chosen moment of vulnerability. Each word felt like a step onto an unfamiliar terrain as she stood on the precipice of choice. "You simply begin," Clara replied, her voice gaining strength. "You summon the courage to document the truth, and I'll be here as your support system, someone who knows what silence can do." Emily grappled with the enormity of her responsibility. What if the revelations hurt those she loved? What if, by unveiling her family's truths, she jeopardized her relationships? Yet the quiet pull of her unmet desires stood in stark contrast to the familial chains that dragged her down. As Clara's unwavering presence fueled Emily's resolve, she felt the immense weight of her manuscript pressing against her chest again. She had always imagined herself published, sharing her passion with the world. But what if those stories could also speak to her reality? Perhaps more than mere words, they could become instruments of change. She glanced towards Colt, his expression tense, eyes narrowed in confusion. The connection between them felt irreversibly tangled. Revealing her family's truths could fracture their fragile bond. Would he stand beside her or cast her aside for the truth? There lay a deeper fear, one that gnawed at her insides. If she were to embrace her voice fully, would she risk losing what little stability she had constructed? "Emily," Clara's voice broke through her thoughts once again. "In seeking the truth, you are not only liberating yourself, but giving a voice to the silenced stories that deserve to be told. This is your legacy." That reminder coated her mind in determination. Emily squared her shoulders, her heart pounding a relentless cadence that echoed in her ears. She understood then that embracing her narrative wasn't simply risky, it was revolutionary. "All right," she murmured, clarity crystallizing into conviction. "I'll find the courage to write my truth." Gripping the manuscript tighter, she turned to confront her past and embrace her future anew. But as she readied herself for that leap, the brooding silence from Colt pierced her like an icy dagger. "Emily," he whispered, his tone barely audible, yet heavy with significance. "You don't have to do this alone, but you also need to ask yourself if you're ready for the consequences." The juxtaposition of his support and caution felt like a profound ultimatum. Emily's heart raced, knowing clarity was potentially overshadowed by danger. Would she truly set forth on a journey of self-discovery that could unravel all she knew? With courage bubbling in her chest, she had one final choice amidst the uncertainties that lingered.
What awaited at the crossroads of discovery and consequence? The first words of her new life lingered on the tip of her fingers, ready to be unleashed. As Emily stood on the brink of uncovering her family's truths, her determination surged through her veins, mixing with the trepidation that hung thick in the air. She could feel the weight of her manuscript pressing into her palms like a physical reminder of the battle on the horizon. Each word she planned to write would hold the potential to rewrite not just her own narrative, but the narratives of those who came before her. She took a long, steadying breath, her surroundings fading subtly as she focused inward. Emily's mind turned with a swift intensity, dissecting the arguments circling within her. What would it mean to challenge the narratives that had been fed to her since childhood? Would the act of writing inevitably draw lines that would deter or strengthen those connections she so deeply cherished, especially with Colt? Her gaze flickered back to him, the concern etched on his face a stark contrast to the vortex of fascination swirling in her heart. Behind that concern was a bond she desperately wanted to preserve, but understood could shift under the weight of honesty. She felt his unyielding support, yet his warning echoed in her mind. Was she truly prepared to shake the very foundations of her reality? "Emily," she imagined Clara's voice, a reassuring yet firm admonition ringing in her ears. "You need to carve out your space in this world, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. We cannot allow fear to dictate our actions." Motivated by Clara's unwavering belief in her, her hesitance morphed into a mantra of resolve. She would confront her fear, acknowledge it, and transform it into something formidable. Wouldn't that be the legacy she wished to leave? With clarity sharpening her vision, she walked to her desk, fingertips tingling at the prospect of unleashing the thoughts trapped inside. As she settled into her chair, her mind moved swiftly to the first words she could pen. What would be the opening line? A powerful statement, an invocation of her truth, or perhaps a question that lingered in the hearts of many? "How did we get here?" she typed, her fingers flowing lightly over the keys. Each letter came alive with an undeniable force. Here was her first confrontation with her family's past, the initiating moment that would unravel the tight-knit strands of lies and secrets. The rhythm of typing created a pulse in the room, a heartbeat that resonated with her growing confidence. She documented family dynamics, the oppressive silence at gatherings, and the whispered conversations that twisted around her like smoke. It was exhilarating to pour out everything she'd bottled up for years. Yet as she pursued this narrative excavation, doubts flickered, demanding her attention. Emily recalled Clara's words, images of countless stories sacrificed for the sake of family reputation, of trust traded for silence. Would she too find herself ensnared in that cycle? The fear of alienating her family and losing her connection to Colt gnawed at her, punctuated by every word she put to page. After hours of writing and inner turmoil, she paused. Her gaze drifted to the window where the sun dipped below the horizon. The ethereal glow cast gentle shadows, guiding her toward the realization that there was no perfect moment to unveil her truths, only the now that demanded to be embraced. Forging connections was a part of this process. She would have to share her work, to invite that confrontation she had so skillfully avoided. Determined, she hesitated no longer. With a single click, Emily hit send on the draft to Clara, her heart racing with anticipation. The action propelled her into uncharted waters, one that could quickly shift from exhilaration to dread. And just as she leaned back in her chair, anticipation morphing into anxiety, her phone buzzed. A text from Colt flashed on the screen, pulling her from her thoughts.
"Can we talk? There's something I need to say." With a rush of adrenaline, Emily felt the ground shift beneath her once more. Would this be the moment he revealed his thoughts on her unfolding journey? Would it strengthen their bond, or drive a wedge between them as truths emerged? As uncertainty loomed once again, she recognized the importance of responding. This was not merely about her story anymore. Whatever Colt had to say could either tether them together or spin into the vast unknown. With her heart racing and her fingers poised to type, she grappled with the depths of her vulnerability, realizing this was yet another crossroads demanding her attention. The complexity of their situation soared. How far could she go in her truth-telling before it redefined the confines of her relationships? What lay ahead was a confrontation that could solidify her newfound voice or fracture everything she held dear. Emily's heart raced as she stared at Colt's text, the weight of their shared reality pressing down like an anvil on her chest. "Can we talk?" Simple words, yet they felt monumental. Was this the conversation that could alter everything?
She took a moment to gather her thoughts, tapping her fingers against the desk, each beat a reminder of her growing tension. Writing had been an act of liberation, a way to excavate buried truths, but now those truths seemed poised to confront her face to face. What if Colt didn't understand her motivations? What if he felt betrayed for daring to explore the secrets that encircled their lives? Decisions unfolded in her mind like a roadmap. Should she respond immediately, revealing her readiness for complete transparency, or should she temper her enthusiasm with caution? Emily quickly typed, "Yes, I'd like that. When and where?" Once sent, she felt exposed, as if the very act of reaching out stripped her of every layer of pretense. The uncertainty loomed heavy, but within it lay a spark of determination. She needed clarity to navigate the crossroads their lives had reached together. As she awaited his reply, she pulled back her chair and paced the room, absorbing the ambiance, so familiar yet tinged with the weight of impending revelation. Her manuscript lay open on her desk, a testament not just to her family's past, but potentially a catalyst that could define the trajectory of her future. The laptop screen flickered, illuminating her face, while shadows deepened around her. Would she allow Colt into the inner workings of her newfound voice? Was it too soon? Too vulnerable? Every consideration felt daunting, yet she had come too far to turn back now. Clara's voice echoed again in her mind, urging her to confront the uncomfortable. The potential for growth and understanding was too significant to overlook. Minutes crawled by before her phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. How about the park in an hour? Colt had chosen a neutral place, perhaps an unspoken acknowledgement of the emotional heft of their conversation. With a rush of determination, Emily decided this was a moment for her to show up fully as herself. She had begun to articulate her feelings through her manuscript, and now it was time to voice the complexities face to face. This could be her opportunity to integrate her personal journey with the intricacies of their relationship. She took a moment to prepare mentally, to center herself before diving into uncharted waters. A few deep breaths helped. This wasn't just a conversation about her writing. It was an invitation for vulnerability and shared understanding. And as daunting as it felt, she realized it was an essential step towards thriving, not only in her personal life, but in her craft. With determination resonating in her chest, she grabbed her jacket and exited her home, leaving the manuscript behind momentarily. The crisp air greeted her, invigorating as she made her way towards the park. Each step thudded against the pavement like a pulse, reminding her of the heartbeat of creation and connection. What kind of truths would be unearthed in this conversation?
Would Colt resonate with her journey? Or would he retreat into the familiar, resisting the change she was intent on pursuing? As she arrived at the park, she noticed Colt sitting on a bench, a pensive expression settling over him like the clouds rolling over the sun. The landscape before her was alive with potential. How ironic, she thought, that amidst the blooms and budding trees laid the dirt of unearthing personal histories. Would their conversation bridge the gap between her desires and the realities of their intertwined lives? In this pivotal moment, Emily realized that her path forward would not merely reframe her story, but redefine their connection as well. As she approached him, her resolve solidified. The stakes were higher than ever, but she knew that this plunge into vulnerability could be the very gift they both needed to fully embrace the whole of who they were. As she opened her mouth to speak, ready to unveil the layers of her heart, she had no idea how the tides of change would sweep them through this moment. Would it deepen their bond or pull them apart? Emily's heart quickened as she crossed the final few steps to Colt. Each beat echoed the uncertainty swirling in her mind, contrasting sharply with the calm blooms punctuating the park's landscape. Colt looked up, his eyes darting with the hint of concern, yet there was an invitation in his gaze, a silent rhythm urging her to step closer. "Hey," she said, her voice shaky but resolute. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course. I figured it needed to be sooner rather than later." His words hung between them like thick fog. "I've been thinking a lot." She took a seat beside him, the bench surprisingly sturdy against the weight of her anxiety. Their historical connection loomed ominously, and the shadows of their past lives amalgamated with the decisions that lay ahead. "About what?" she pressed, sensing the need to dive into the depths before the tide could sweep her away. Colt hesitated, a muscle in his jaw tightening. "I wanted to understand what you've been working on, your writing. You mentioned family stories." "Right, it's complicated," she replied, steeling herself. "I've been trying to make sense of everything. My family, our pasts, it all intertwines." With fragile hands, she released the words that had lingered, waiting for this moment to emerge fully formed. "I realized that writing is not just about the past. It's about uncovering truths that sometimes can be uncomfortable for everyone." Colt's brow furrowed as he absorbed her meaning. "You're talking about emotions we've both been ignoring for too long." "Exactly. I thought the story might heal some wounds, but then I thought, what if it opens up others?" A knot tightly wound in her stomach as she prepared to meet his inevitable reaction, knowing it may not be what she hoped for. "What kind of wounds?" he asked, his voice steady yet tinged with reluctance.
"Together," he echoed, the word feeling foreign yet charged with the potential of their shared history. The thought trembled in the air between them, a fragile thread linking their tangled narratives. "Let's take it one step at a time," Emily proposed, her tone steadying the quaking uncertainty around them. "We don't have to dive into everything all at once, just the parts that feel manageable and truthful." Colt weighed her suggestion, realizing that she was offering him a lifeline wrapped in vulnerability. What did it say about him if he rejected it? "Okay," he finally agreed, an unexpected rush of courage surging through his veins. "What's the first step?" Emily leaned closer, her voice low and earnest. "I think we need to lay everything out, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The story isn't just about words on a page, it's about understanding what we've both been avoiding." Recollections of childhood memories flashed in his mind, the sunny afternoons filled with laughter but shadowed by secrets. The images were intermingled with moments of pain, times when the past had loomed uncomfortably large. What if we don't like what we uncover? Her eyes deepened with understanding. The sincerity of her expression steadied his racing pulse. "That's a risk we have to accept if we want to grow.
Change isn't born from comfort. It comes from confronting our realities. In that moment, Colt recognized her in a way he hadn't before, a determined woman ready to challenge not only herself, but also him. The spark of desire to meet her halfway fueled his resolve. He could either cling to his past, a past that often felt like an anchor, or he could choose to embark on this vulnerable path. "What do we do first?" he asked, though a hint of trepidation tightened his throat. Emily pulled out a notebook from her bag, its pages filled with her thoughts and sketches. "Let's start with this. I want to hear your memories, the stories that shaped your perspective, the things you haven't shared but that influenced you." Her proposition ignited an internal tug of war. The instinct to shield himself warred with a burgeoning desire to be open. "And if I'm not ready to speak about some things, then we'll go at your pace. No one is rushing this. This is our discovery. We find our truths in our time," she reassured, laying the groundwork for their shared journey. Colt felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this could be what he needed, a transformation tempered by her steady support. He took a deep breath, centering himself in the present. "Okay, I'll try," he vowed, surprising even himself with his willingness to engage. As Emily flipped open the notebook, he sensed a shift inside him, an urge to excavate the depths he had long kept buried. In the looming task ahead, he could feel a multitude of paths unfurling, entwined with uncertainty, yet laced with promise. "Let's begin at the start, then. What's the first memory that comes to mind?"
The air around them thickened with anticipation as his mind raced, combing through a catalog of fragmentary moments. He hesitated, searching for a thread to pull, one that wouldn't unravel him in the process. Finally, a single name surfaced, daring him to confront what had been lodged in his throat for far too long. "Riley," he uttered, the name slipping from his lips like shards of glass, squeezing the air from his lungs. Emily nodded, encouraging him to continue. Who was Riley? And just like that, the conversation deepened into the heart of their tangled lives, revealing alliances, betrayals, and the uncomfortable weight of expectations. Colt could feel his defenses quaking. This was the crux of everything he had learned to avoid. With each word that poured forth, he realized they weren't merely uncovering stories. They were igniting a shared narrative that could redefine who they were in each other's lives. The path forward shimmered like untraveled terrain, filled with the thrill of possibility. But as he spoke, uncertainty crept in. Would exposing these long-buried memories truly lead to freedom, or would it simply give life to more demons? As Emily leaned in closer, her eyes intent on his, the question erupted in his mind. What will it cost us to truly know each other? Colt felt the fabric of his past unraveling before him, a tight-knit pattern of fear and shame slowly loosening. Each syllable that tumbled from his mouth felt like an incantation, bringing him closer to the truth of who he was and who he had avoided being. As he spoke of Riley, a pivotal figure in his childhood, the edges of his memories sharpened into focus, revealing a tapestry woven with color and darkness. "Riley was my best friend," he began, finding an odd comfort in the association of the name with the warmth of companionship amidst fractured trust. "We grew up on the same street, sharing hazy summer days filled with skateboards and secrets. With each recollection, a part of him began to soften, his heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of vulnerability. But Riley wasn't just fun and games. He struggled a lot at home. Emotions surfaced that he hadn't confronted in years, and as he painted a portrait of his friends' battles, the contrasts were stark. His friends' laughter against the backdrop of unspoken despair. I didn't know how to help. Instead, I would isolate myself, thinking that if I didn't engage, maybe I wouldn't get pulled into the mess after all. As Colt opened up, I could feel Emily's attention anchoring him. Her gaze was unwavering, almost as if she were forging a shield around the fragility of his words.
He feared that sharing more might fracture that safety, but the momentum was gaining, an uncontrollable wave urging him to dive deeper. Riley and I had a pact, a promise to be there for each other, but then one night everything changed. The words caught in his throat, the weight of that pivotal moment threatening to crush him again.
He inhaled sharply, summoning the courage to confront the abyss. He took his own life. Silence enveloped the room, heavy with unuttered sympathy. It was more than a memory. It was a judgment, an indictment of his perceived failures. Colt had shared the moment where his world split in two, yet the fragility of it all made his skin prickle. I kept thinking, what if I had been there? What if I had said something that mattered? Emily, breath held, finally broke the quiet, her voice a soothing balm in the aftermath of his confession. "You were just a kid. You couldn't have known," she said, but it did little to salve the guilt festering within him. "Maybe, but I internalized it. I thought protecting myself meant shutting people out. I told myself I could distance myself from pain, but in reality I isolated deeper." He could feel the chains binding him, the self-imposed shackles that thwarted his ability to connect. Colt looked up, truly meeting Emily's eyes for the first time. A kaleidoscope of emotions flickered across her face: empathy, understanding, and an unyielding challenge. What if facing that pain is the only way to break free, to begin to trust again? He pondered her words. For so long he had believed that retreating into himself was safety, but Emily was illuminating another path, one that required grit and honesty. "I want to step away from this fear," he declared, although his conviction wavered, still raw from the exposure. "I want to learn how to let people in. I want to know what it feels like to be vulnerable without the heavy cost I've always associated with it." A flicker of resolve ignited within him, enough to want to transform the painful shards of his past into lessons for his future. But would it truly unfold the way he hoped? As if sensing the lingering doubt, Emily offered a nod, a silent promise that they would navigate this turbulent terrain together. But as the conversation deepened, a crack in his emerging resolve pulsed within him. What if some wounds could never heal? What if the ghosts of his past were not merely shades he could shed, but chains designed to bind him forever? With the weight of possibility heavy in the air, Colt faced the unsettling reality. Proclaiming change was easier than executing it. What will happen when we face what's left unspoken? He wondered aloud, a question laden with both trepidation and longing. Emily's gaze didn't falter, and the challenge glimmered in her eyes, daring him to confront the very heart of it, the starting point of whatever journey lay ahead. The air in the room buzzed with an unsaid understanding, a recognition of the fragile bridge Colt stood on. Uncertainty loomed over him like a shadow, but with it came a glimmer of opportunity, a chance to break free from the restrictions he had self-imposed. Emily's supportive presence ignited a spark of defiance within him. He was tired of living in the fray of silence, of being a spectator to his own life.
With every shared memory, each thread of regret felt lighter, yet the moment felt precarious, balanced on the edge of vulnerability versus retreat. He opened his mouth, devising a plan in the folds of his mind. Can we go deeper? The question hung in the air, daring him to push the boundaries he had long shielded. He could feel his pulse quicken, the fear of possible exposure prickling at his skin. Yet there was a potent rush that accompanied the thought of finally facing his past head-on. Emily nodded, her seriousness cutting through his trepidation. Absolutely, it's time. With his heart pounding, Colt chose to confront the memories he had avoided, his home life, the fortress he built that shielded him from emotional pain. After Riley, I buried everything. My parents' issues, the chaos in my house. When my mother left, I promised myself I wouldn't let the world inside, but I think that's when I stopped living. As he spoke, the realization of those lost years rushed over him like a cold tide. He had clung to his fortress, convinced it was safer there, but now it felt more like a tomb. Every barrier he erected meant isolating himself from the beauty and warmth that real connections offered. The irony wasn't lost on him. In his quest to avoid pain, he had denied himself joy, too. The corners of Emily's mouth turned upwards as she listened, encouragement emanating from her. You're recognizing patterns that want to keep you stuck, but look at you. Here you are, ready to explore the truth. That's no small feat. He leaned in, drawn closer by her sincerity, compelled by her unwavering gaze. But what happens if I break down those walls only to find the same sorrow waiting for me? What if it hurts more to let go? Letting go doesn't mean losing yourself. It means rediscovering who you can truly be. And if the pain does come, you'll have the strength to face it. You've already taken such a brave step. Colt took a deep breath, piecing together understanding with newfound courage. Behind the stones of mistrust he had piled high, he saw flickers of light. Was it possible to let in new experiences, to embrace the uncertainty that accompanied them? He thought of Riley, of the pact they made, the courage to be there for one another, and perhaps, in the act of trusting, Colt could finally honor that promise. Okay, he shifted, a determined edge lacing his words. If facing the past means I get a chance at a future, I'm ready to try. But what if I don't know where to start? Emily's eyes sparkled with potential. Start with the present. Make a list of people you could reach out to. Friends, family, colleagues, people who might offer something to you. Then take that first step. The thought hung there, palpably daunting yet invigorating. He could identify the faces he had whisked away, the acquaintances left to languish, each a thread back to a life he had long denied.
I can do that, he resolved, envisioning the consequences of opening up. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it felt possible. As they sat in the wake of this commitment, Colt's breath caught briefly at how much he had laid bare. But suddenly, a more potent realization rippled through him. What if while he took these steps, new relationships brought their own challenges and fears? Before he could fully articulate that thought, an unplanned burst of laughter erupted from outside. Emily's smile widened. Looks like you're not the only one facing fears. Sometimes life throws unexpected things our way to soften the blows. That laughter resonated within him, a contrasting reminder of how joy could coexist with the shadows of sorrow. The life he had avoided could still breathe vibrancy despite the struggles. Let's embrace it then, he said, steeling himself for the path ahead. But as they began to work through his list, Colt's chest tightened with an unsettling awareness of the inevitable, the haunting truth that opening up might reveal a new set of fears he had yet to confront. What awaited him on this journey? As every uncertainty morphed into potential, a sudden realization flickered uncomfortably in his thoughts. With each word he bravely carved into the air, he felt simultaneously liberated and trapped by the weight of what was yet unspoken. What stark truths might emerge when he faced those he had long neglected? Colt stood at the threshold of a transformation, his heart racing as he recounted the long-buried memories that shaped him. With Emily by his side, he felt a rush of clarity and finally began to see potential instead of peril. No longer did he want to be weighed down by the past. He was ready to reshape his future.
As the sun dipped lower in the horizon, casting warm golden light over them, he ventured deeper, recounting tales not just of Riley, but of the many unshared moments that haunted his memories. He spoke of his mother's departure, of the afternoons spent in silence while his father's anger filled the rooms. With each spoken truth, he felt unwieldy chains that had bound him for years slowly unravel. "Every time I pushed people away, I felt more alive," Colt admitted, staring into Emily's understanding eyes. "But as I withdrew, I also knew I was losing the essence of who I could become." Emily listened intently, her presence a solid anchor in the choppy waters of his past. "You're not alone in this anymore, Colt. It's not just about confronting those fears, it's about embracing the fact that you can redefine them." The initial hesitance faded as Emily's words fueled his growing resolve. He understood then that every memory he shared was a step towards breaking the cycle of silence and solitude, and for the first time he felt in command of his narrative, ready to take back the power that had been quietly siphoned away over the years.
"Let's create a path for the future together," he suggested, inspired by their exchanged vulnerabilities. "Let's write down our goals, what we wish to create moving forward." With Emily's enthusiastic nod, they took out the notebook once more. They began to draft their ambitions, to bridge connections, to explore and understand the depths of their histories, to transform each memory into stepping stones towards growth and real relationships. "We'll start with the people you want to reach out to," Emily urged, her smile like a beacon of encouragement. "And I will do the same, reconnecting with friends I've lost touch with over the years." As the ink flowed across the pages, Colt felt lighter, the burden of secrecy fading with each written truth. He could hear the echoes of his past, but instead of drowning in despair, they now resonated as lessons shaping his being. Minutes turned into hours as he and Emily poured their hearts into intentions and aspirations, their laughter punctuating the moments of sincerity that so often eluded them. "Tell me more about your manuscript," he urged, directing the conversation back to her. Emily's eyes sparkled with vibrant enthusiasm. "It's not just about family secrets, it's about our personal legacies, the narratives that we create, and how they tie us together. I've realized writing is not just about telling, it's also about understanding where I stand amidst the legacies we inherit." Colt found himself captivated by her passion. For the first time, he realized that in reclaiming her voice, Emily was also creating opportunities for both of them to face the truths of their intertwined fates. He felt honored to be part of her journey, and it only propelled him further on his path of redemption. Hours later, as they wrapped up their expansive dialogue, a sense of profound well-being washed over him. "Together, we've faced centuries of silence," Colt mused, "and emerged, not just alive, but thriving. We owe it to ourselves to carry this momentum forward." When they stood to leave, he could feel the connections forming, not just in the shared experiences, but also in the ambition that lay before them. He was eager to reach out to the people who mattered, friends, family, mentors, ready to sculpt every relationship with clarity, honesty, and newfound vulnerability. As he exchanged a lingering glance with Emily, he felt an electric connection thread through them both, resilience, hope, and an understanding that together they had the power to rewrite their stories. "Let's meet again tomorrow," Emily suggested, her excitement palpable. "We'll build on this foundation, dig into your lists, and continue this staunch journey of truth-seeking." He couldn't help but smile, the shared promise echoing in his thoughts. "I'd like that." The next day, as he watched the sunset transform the sky into a swirling canvas of colors, he felt ever more certain of his purpose.
He was not the boy trapped inside familial expectations. He was Colt Mackenzie, a man ready to redefine everything he thought he knew about himself. This was the moment he had long craved, the freedom to carve his path through honesty, connection, and shared truth. As he embarked into this new chapter, he felt an invigorating rush of possibilities. He was ready to embrace every challenge, each moment of growth, and finally conquer the fears that once bound him. And as their stories intertwined, Colt realized that the journey of uncovering past pains could inevitably lead toward a narrative filled with shared triumphs. Together they were writing a legacy anew, one founded on trust and connection, unfurling into a future not defined by the shadows of their past, but illuminated by the strength of their resilience. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories, as the journey of personal transformation is just beginning. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm with your support. It truly makes a difference. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. I want to hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible story of courage and rediscovery.